Welcome to the Impact Players Linking Shields podcast with your host, Warren Mainard and John Beazley. Our mission is simple, inspiring men to be great husbands, fathers, and leaders by equipping them to thrive in the relationships that matter most.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Impact Players Linking Shields podcast, a podcast for men who want to grow to be better husbands, fathers, and leaders by equipping them to thrive in the relationships that matter most. And guys, you are in for an absolute treat today. I am so thrilled to have Dr. Chris Harper, aka Harp, joining us today on the Linking Shields podcast. Dr. Harper is the leader of an amazing organization that is absolutely in line with what Impact Players is all about, BetterMan. But before we talk about that, this is a brother who is, in our opinion, an impact player. He is a husband, he is a father, a leader, and a man who loves King Jesus with all of his heart. And you are going to discover as soon as we get into this that Harp has a little bit of a Southern accent. And we love that. We love having guests from all over the country. So Harp, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining myself and John Beazley for this podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and what you're doing with BetterMan.
Man, it's so good to be with you, Warren, and Brother John. Thank you for that introduction. I'm just going to bring you everywhere with me. That was so good, so kind, so encouraging, and just grateful to be here. So originally from Oklahoma, but then I grew up in central Kentucky. And now I've spent the last 10 plus years in Texas. So most people can't understand me. They're like, I'm not sure, where the accent's from or what it is. But yeah, that's kind of where I've been the last 35 years. But been married for, go ahead.
I grew up in the Seattle area, but I moved to Florida when I was 16. And then I lived in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Texas for about 20 years. And Chris, I can remember the first time that I said the word y'all. And it was a great feeling. Like, it's just, I think y'all is a God word. I love the word y'all. So go, but tell us more about your family.
So good, man. And if, sometimes I'll say the light is bright and white, and then you really know you're in the country then.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been married for a little over, I think, 16 years now. We have 4 kids. My oldest, my daughter, she's 12, and then I have an 11-year-old son, a 5-year-old son, and a soon-to-be 4-year-old son. So that means I haven't slept in about 5 years. And it's always loud at my house. Like, it's always turned up to 11, man. I've got 3 wild boys, and I let them be boys. Yeah. And we absolutely love that. So we've been in Texas for 10 years now, and man, just excited where the Lord has brought us. About 2.5 years ago, he brought me to BetterMan, and I had the privilege of taking over for Robert Lewis, who's just an absolute stud. How to Raise a Modern Day Knight, men's fraternity. I mean, Robert's he's just a killer. He's a stud. And so I have the privilege, man, of learning from him and being in his ecosystem, and it's been such a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about BetterMan and what it is that BetterMan's trying to accomplish in the lives of men today.
Yeah, so good. So I have a saying: in the 1970s, culture said we don't need men. In the 1990s, they said we don't want men. And here we are in 2024. And the question is, what is a man? Mm. That's where we've come in 50, 60 years. To say it another way, 2 generations ago, men were confident in their manhood and masculinity. A generation ago, we began to compromise it. And today we're just confused about it. So most men live in what I call a masculinity fog, just this confusion. And it's because 41% of young men today grew up without a physical father. In the 1960s, that was 4%. Today, it's 41%. That doesn't include what I call functional orphans, guys like me who had a dad in the home, but he was emotionally, physically, spiritually distant. Right. And then as you get inside city centers and as you get closer to urban centers, that number is sometimes 70, 80% young men growing up without a dad. So we have a saying at BetterMan, you can't become what you can't define. If you can't define it, you can't become it. So when you think about men's movements, right, think about the 90s, think about Promise Keepers. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of that, but the mantra was you had good men, you had bad men, and we're going to take bad men and make them good men. Well, we don't believe that at all today. We believe there are good men and there are men who want to be good. They just don't know how.
Right.
They never had anybody show them how. They never had a guide. They didn't have a spiritual father. The majority of them didn't have physical fathers. So we had a whole generation grow up without any guidance, without a definition. So what BetterMan does, it's super simple. We put a flag in the ground and we said, this is the definition. This is what it means to be a man in the 21st century and thrive, to be a good man, God's man. We call it the 4 W's. Obviously, we can get into that, but we believe if you give men clarity and then you put community around them, you can change a man's life. And man, the Lord's been doing it for 5 years. It's been pretty awesome to watch.
That's fantastic. Probably, I would think you said 4 W's, so I'm very intrigued. But I'm sure the alliteration really helps with like, hey, I can remember these 4, and like really, what is complex often is ignored.
Yeah.
And what is simple is usually repeatable, right? And you can kind of think, if you're thinking about like making disciples that make disciples, and you're thinking about particularly in the context of men, like keeping that simple, I'm sure is really awesome. Warren, I don't want to hijack the direction you wanted to go, but I would love to hear the 4 W's, that framework. Did you call them pillars? Is that what you called them? I think you mentioned.
Yeah, we just call them the 4 W's. Yeah,
Okay.
it really is a framework. But and to your point, John, this is what we've learned about men. And this is, I don't bash men. I think culture does that enough. So I'm here to encourage men. But this is the reality. Women, they don't need a reason to gather. Women will just get together. Men, on the other hand, if men don't know how to win, they won't play the game.
That's right.
If they don't know how to win, they'll just sit on the sidelines. And I don't call it our wiring, call it human nature, call it a project of, or a, the predicament of culture, whatever you want to call it. The reality is if men don't know how to win, they won't play. So we've basically created a simple scorecard that shows men how to win. And the video game manufacturers figured this out decades ago, which is why it's just open AI, and you just keep leveling up, right? Because they just keep winning and they'll keep playing, which is why they play, games and things of that nature. But 4 W's, simple scorecard. A real man courageously follows God's word. A real man loves, serves, and protects God's woman. A real man excels at the work he's been given, whether he's a CEO or a CPA or a college student. Whatever work is in front of him, he's gonna do it to the glory of the Lord. And then a real man betters God's world through his community, through his church, and through his children. So word, woman, work, world. 4 W's, alliteration, super sticky. And then the BetterMan journey is unpacking those 4 W's.
That's so good. Because I think a lot of times, guys, they at least in their minds, they think that they know what it means to win at work. Like they're like, okay, if I can make more money than I made last year, if I can keep getting promotions. And so there is that gamification of the career that keeps guys pushing forward. But then they get home and they don't know how to define the win. They don't know how to be a great husband or a great father. And so I love that simple definition. And then to go beyond, because I think a lot of times we say winning at work and at home, but there's even more to it than that. We're supposed to be winning with the word of God in our lives, but also we're supposed to be winning the world to the Lord, and having that mission that is bigger than yourself, and that it's a part of God's mission. I think that's what a lot of men are missing. So let's talk a little bit about this topic for today, which is the state of manhood. And Chris, you teed it up perfectly when you talked about that expression. In fact, it's one that I have repeated over the last year about the 1970s. People were saying, I don't need a man. The 1990s, they were saying, I don't want a man. Now they're just saying, what is a man? Like they're completely confused. So recently, BetterMan put out something called the State of Manhood report. So share a little bit about what that is, like not just the statistics, but maybe kind of like the stories that represent the state of manhood today.
Yeah, we wanted to paint a picture, and non-biased. We're ecumenical. BetterMan's not associated with any denomination. We're not associated with any church. There's no necessarily political or doctrinal, framework that we're using. We just like to report. These are the facts. These are what people reported. This is what, the world is experiencing. So we put together this report in partnership with Gospel Family Ministries, and we wanted to look at 3 areas of a man's life. We wanted to look at his faith, we wanted to look at his family, and we wanted to look at his vocation, his work. And just ask the question, man, especially men in the West, where are they at? How are they doing in these areas? And the data was the data. We heard countless stories. We took both quantitative and qualitative data. So when it comes to faith, and really church in the West, men haven't been doing well for about 3 decades. Really the last 30 years, the church, and I don't mean to paint with a broad brush, but I'm going to, the Big C church has been catering to children and women. And rightly so. It was the children and women who were carrying all the water. They were the ones showing up. They were the ones volunteering. Like I get it. You want to serve your base, and the base has been children and women. To this day, we spend $7 billion a year on children's ministry in the West. $7 billion, right? 80% of churches in America have a functioning women's ministry. Less than 10% have a functioning men's ministry. Think about that.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I say functioning, it's anything beyond an ex-NFL kicker who comes and talks at a breakfast about faith and football. And listen, I love ex-NFL kickers. I got a couple that are friends. I'm not bashing on that. I'm just saying there's got to be something more, for men. And so what we discovered is, as children and as women began to be prioritized in the church, what did men do? They slowly quit. They didn't know how to win anymore. I had one guy tell me, he said, brother, it's not that I hate going to church. I just hate that my wife is better at it than me. I mean, bro, that's deep, right? So like he didn't know how to win at church. And what happens is we just stop going. We stop participating. It's not a part of our life. So go to the framework of family. Same thing, right? We know how to win in the workplace, or at least we used to, because of the promotions, because of the aspirations, because, everything was kind of, quantitative. You made the sale, you got the commission. men would come home from work and they didn't know how to win in the home. Your teenage daughter isn't the same thing as a sales team. Your toddler son, isn't the same as clocking in and clocking out. You never get to clock out at home. Like we didn't know how to win at home. So we stopped doing family devotionals. We stopped being the spiritual leader of our home. Most men don't pray with their wives, and these are professing Christian men. Most men aren't leading their family. They're not serving as the prophet and priest of their home. They don't spend a lot of time at home. The third place becomes the most important place. So, we talk to a lot of men who spend more time in the gym than they do with their own families, because they know how to win at the gym, right? They can see gains. I used to bench 180. Now I'm benching 205. Like I can win here. So we started seeing men, just not spend time at home. And then when you get into the workplace, dude, men used to find purpose at work, but today we discover that they're finding little meaning at work. The average millennial will have 6 different careers, not 6 different jobs, 6 different careers over the course of his work life. Because they've bought into this, really, I think it's a lie, that somehow my job is supposed to bring ultimate fulfillment. Somehow my job is supposed to bring meaning, right? If you went back 2 generations ago and asked my grandfather or my great-grandfather, hey, did working on the assembly line at Ford Motor Company bring you fulfillment? He would have said absolutely. And if you would ask him why, he would have said, because it enabled me to feed my children and put shoes on their feet. That's why it brought fulfillment, right? So he went to work every day and he worked on that assembly line because that was how he provided for his family. But today we've kind of that's not enough. Like work has to be something greater than what God intended it. And I'll give you a great example of this, man. My AC went out in my house about 6 months ago, which is a problem in Texas, right? So my wife calls the AC guy. He gets to my house. He's working on my AC on the side of my house. And my wife says, Chris, go out and see if he needs anything. So I come walk. It's a true story. I come walking around the side of my house and he pops up from behind my AC and he says, hey, you're the BetterMan guy. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm a guy. He's like, dude, our church watches your curriculum. Like we watch you on Thursday night. And I said, man, that's awesome. And I high-fived him and gave him a hug. And I said, can I help you? And, we're working on my AC. Well, I pack up his tools and I'm helping him load his tools in the truck. And he turns and he looks at me and he says, dude, I wish I could be like you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you do these videos and you preach and you teach and you help men. I just wish I could do more for Jesus. He said, I'm a believer. I want to do more for Jesus. And I said, well, how long have you been an HVAC guy? And he said, 20 years. I said, how many homes have you been in? He said, I don't know, probably 25,000 homes. I said, brother, do you know if you work hard and bring Christ into every one of those homes, you have more influence than any megachurch pastor in this country? And he started to tear up in my driveway. And he's like, I've never thought about it like that. I said, well, today we start thinking about it like that. Man, what you do is infinitely valuable. Like God's not looking at me and looking at you and assigning me more value. No. Like it's all a holy work when we're doing it in the name of King Jesus, dude. And it was like a revelation. So like when we talk about winning at work, like that's the stuff we're talking about, but men don't see that today. There's a disconnect because of that sacred secular divide.
Yeah, I like that. I think like what you're doing too is you're taking what might be considered the mundane and you're really redeeming it in the fact of saying, hey, this is actually sacred as well. And being able to go and say, doing this actually matters. Where I think like my generation, the next generation would just say, I don't want to be doing things that they don't really matter. Right. And it's actually, and you go traditional culture, a lot of times it was, how are we actually helping advance the tribe or the group? You know, in an individualistic culture like we're in now, it typically turns to like, how is this making me feel, and how is it advancing my self brand? You know, which is why there's such a sensation for like, hey, maybe I could go viral. Like going viral is like at the top peak of like so many people's interest, even if they kind of joke about it, like, oh, hey, maybe this will go viral, you know, and I'll get really rich or be, you know, and you're getting almost viral for absurd things. And, but it's just kind of like, and the more and more that gets highlighted, the more and more people are getting discontent with the mundane and the everyday. And I think redeeming that hard work is saying, hey, this is just as much important in the eyes of God than standing on a stage or being seen on the other end of a camera.
Right.
I think that's really interesting. I like that.
And we did it to ourselves. You know, I don't like to call people out, so I won't say his name, but I was recently with a fairly famous Christian author. And I just kind of questioned and said, hey man, you know, have we created this culture and this idea that if we're not always doing the extraordinary, then we're not doing enough? And I said, man, I'm tired of being told that, you know, I have to climb a mountain to become a king. I'm tired of being told, like, you know, I'm tired of every Sunday seeing in churches the financial planner that sold his business to go start an orphanage in Africa. Like, if that's all we ever talk about, guys like me who are not selling my business to go start an orphanage feel like I'm less than, feel like I'm not doing enough. Like, at some point, we've got to be able to tell men that like ordinary is powerful. You know, it was Eugene Peterson that said, you know, that discipleship is long obedience in the same direction. Like we've got to get back to that. And even this new wave of spiritual formation, and again, you know, I'm not calling this guy out. He's a friend of mine, John Mark Comer, guys like that, practicing the way, all this stuff. This stuff is good. The danger in it is it will start to prioritize the individual's journey above the corporate journey. That's the danger. You know, this is Dallas Willard repackaged. This is pre-Reformation when it went to the extreme and you weren't considered holy unless you were living in a monastery. You weren't considered holy unless you became a nun and lived in a, you know, a convent. Like we got to be careful not to go that far, because guys like me, dude, who, I mean, I was a social worker for 4 years, you know, a licensed social worker, and there's nobody that feels less than a social worker. You want to talk about feeling unappreciated? Yeah. You know, and like, man, you're not making a difference if you're just dealing with people's problems over and over again. And I think we forget that 99% of people are never going to have a large ministry platform, and that's okay. They probably don't need one.
Yes. It's kind of that.
And I want to just unpack that expression, feeling less than, because I think that sums up what most men battle with almost every single day, is that there's something in their life that's making them feel less than. Either they've kind of set some goals for their career financially, and they're looking at another guy who's further down the road than they are. There's a position that they're, you know, aspiring to. And then you throw into the mix kind of the Christian component to that of like, okay, not only are you trying to make a lot of money, but also it's got to have deep spiritual meaning. And it's also got to, you know, be something that people in your church admire and ooh and ah about. You know, of course, like that's like threading a needle that almost no one can accomplish. So like you said, it leaves guys feeling less than. So let's like speak to that. Like, there's a passage of scripture, Harp, that is probably one of the most convicting and confusing ones for me in this day and age. And it's Paul when he says, make it your ambition to live a simple life, working with your hands. And I thought about that verse when you were talking about your HVAC friend and what he's doing and the feelings of less than. What would you say to like the 99% of men out there that have those feelings that they're not quite living up to some expectation, whether it's the world or the church, their wife, or their own expectations? What would you say to those guys that may be dealing with that less than insecurity?
Absolutely, man. I would. So this is my favorite topic, one of my favorite topics in all the world. There's two or three things I would say. I would say, first of all, God's economy in no way reflects our economy here on earth. What God values, what God prioritizes. We have a lot of things backwards here. They asked me one time, how do you know the gospel's taken root in a church? And my answer was, the gospel's taken root in a church when a janitor can disciple a CEO and no one thinks differently about it.
Mm.
The greatest sin we do not talk about today is the sin of partiality that James speaks of. It's treating people differently based upon what they do, what they wear, the color of their skin, you name it. And there's no place, in my opinion, there's no place worse than this than sometimes in the church. So I would just remind men that God's economy is not our economy. It was Charles Spurgeon who said the poorest plowman is as great as the greatest prince in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And we need to remember that. And then secondly, man, I would just encourage those guys that the Lord has called us to be faithful right where we are. And there's beauty in that, and bro, there's freedom in that. Knowing that my worth and my identity is not tied into my production and my results, bro, is so freeing.
Yeah.
God is less concerned with what you're doing, and he's more concerned with who you're becoming.
Yeah.
And if I could just drill that into the hearts and into the heads of men and just say, be faithful right where you are, man. With the 2 kids you have, be faithful. With your marriage, be faithful, right? With the work that he's given you, be faithful. And here's the deal. Here's what's crazy, right? And this isn't prosperity gospel, but the Bible teaches, like, if we're faithful with like that which is right in front of us, bro, he will slowly increase our lands.
Yeah.
Like he will slowly, I say slowly, sometimes it's more rapidly, but he will tend to give us more influence. He will tend to give us more responsibility, right? I tell young men all the time, God's not going to give you dominion until you show him that you can control the dominion you have, right? I've got a 10-year-old son. I teach him your dominion is your bedroom. And when your bedroom is in disorder, your life is probably going to be disorder, right? I was talking to a guy about this the other day, and he said, well, I don't have dominion. I said, do you have a pickup truck? He said, yeah. I said, is it clean? He said, nope. I said, that's a problem. I said, that pickup truck, that 12 square feet of space inside that cab, that's your dominion. That's your dominion. Is the gas in the tank? Are the tires inflated? Is the oil been changed? Is the inside clean? I said, exercise order and control over the cab of your truck. And then once you get that down, man, you'll see God will start to increase the responsibility and the reign that he'll give you. It's a 2,000-year-old plus problem, depending on if you're a young, old earth guy, right? Adam had dominion over the garden. Adam allowed a talking snake, which should have been the first sign. Animals rarely talk in the Bible. Like if you come across a talking snake, just kill it. Don't have a conversation with it, kill it. Right? So he allowed this snake to creep up next to his house, man, and he lost control of the garden. He lost dominion, man. And
Mm.
we've been dealing with that ever since. So I would just encourage men, like, I don't know what your churches are doing. I don't know what you're watching, et cetera, et cetera. But just be faithful with what's in front of you. Be faithful in the mundane. Be faithful in the
I like
ordinary.
that.
Redeem the ordinary. And
Mm.
it's there's beauty in that, and there's power in that, man.
Yes. You know, you probably saw Warren and I both look at our calendars. We're like, oh man, when can I schedule in cleaning my vehicle? Because I got to get that in order. I'm just teasing. No, that's so good though. What I like about what you're saying is that it's like you were just putting it in the context of men desire to win.
That's right.
What you're doing is you're changing the scorecard. You're
100%.
like, we need to change the scorecard.
So good.
And if we keep putting it out there as starting an orphanage in Africa, which again, the Lord may direct some people to,
Right.
but that's the scorecard, or becoming a Christian influencer rather than managing your domain, what God's given you. But to me, that gives me really clear, actionable steps. And also, just to kind of tie in with what you were saying with like John Mark Comer, and I know we're trying to be careful about calling people out or anything like that. I actually really loved his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It wrecked me in all the good ways. But I do think, and I think John probably would agree with this, but there's this the peril of the pendulum, right? Where you go from burnout culture to like, what we need is Sabbath. We need rest. We need to slow down. Culture is all about, hustle and move and go. And I think there's a way that is actually gospel and healing. But then we go so far, and then it's like, oh, work. No, Sabbath. I just want to Sabbath all the time. I just want to like relax. I just feel kind of burnt out. And we learn what it's like to actually glorify God in just hard work and doing the thing, like the factory line, like the HVAC guy, and just being able to do that, saying, hey, you know what? Getting home at the end of the day and saying, hey, I did all day. I was serving Jesus to the best of my ability, and I am tired. That's good.
That's it.
Not something that you're trying to escape. This is something that's beautiful. And of course, in the creation narrative, there is this rhythm of work and rest, but it's 6 days of work, and there's the 1 day of rest. And let's make sure that we have that in proportion, And no, anyways, I was just commenting on that, but I like this idea of changing the scorecard, and when we do that, we're creating a context where normal men, every single day men, could say, hey, I can do this. I can live for Jesus.
Absolutely, man. And think about another kind of hot Christian commodity right now. It's this whole concept of true self, false self, right? That we all need to discover our true self. And I was telling a guy not too long ago, I was on another show, and I said, if and when I find my true self, I'm going to put a bullet in the back of his head. Because the Bible doesn't say find your true self. The Bible says die to self and live for Jesus and live for others. Right. So like that's another pendulum swing where we're telling all these guys that you've got to go live in the woods, or you got to go climb this mountain, or you've got to go do this to discover who you truly are. When the Bible is clear, man, die to who you are so that you can live for others. And that, from that perspective, bro, that makes working on the assembly line holy, because I'm here with a good attitude, not complaining, not grumbling, not groaning, and I'm being a light to my coworkers. I'm honoring my employer, and I'm earning a wage and feeding my children, and I've got a roof over their head. Like I'm dying to self and living for all these people around me. And what happens is, as we do that, and again, I think the Bible's clear, we will start to discover that, man, this is what real joy is. This is what real purpose is. Dallas Willard gave the best definition of love I've ever heard. He said, love is simply having somebody else's best interest at heart. And that is rooted in dying to self. That I'm going to practice Philippians 2 and consider others' needs as more important than my own. And man, when we can get to that, it doesn't matter what we're doing, as long as it's ethical and moral, the Lord will be pleased. But the purpose is, man, my work, my marriage, right? My existence is for the glorification of God, to glory God and to help and benefit others. And when you can get to that, man, you experience freedom.
Welcome to Impact Players, where we inspire men to be great husbands, fathers, and leaders by equipping them to thrive in the relationships that matter most. Are you asking yourself, how do I become a better man? How can I grow as a husband and father? Can I succeed both at work and at home? We believe the answer is yes. Impact Players provides rock-solid answers and practical tools for men who want to improve in every area of life. Whether you're single, married, a new dad, or a grandfather, our men's groups, leadership training, and resources will help you thrive. Recent studies show men are struggling more than ever. That's why Impact Players is here. We offer cohorts where you can connect with real men like you, courses with actionable steps, and a nationwide community dedicated to winning at home and at work. Join our online community today and access a wealth of materials designed for your growth. Transform your life, impact your family, business, and community. Ready to get started? Visit impactplayers.org now. Be the man you are destined to be with Impact Players.
I want to change gears and go back to something that you had talked about a few minutes ago, because I just think it's so important, and I really want to hear your thoughts about this. But you talked about the connection between men and the church, and how the church has really catered towards women and children, and as a result, men have kind of checked out. And being here in the Seattle area, Seattle Times put out an article a couple months ago saying that Seattle has now reclaimed the title of the least churched city in America, somewhere around 4%. We had kind of seen a little bit of a bump a few years ago when Mars Hill and City Church with Judah Smith and Ryan Meeks with East Side or Eastgate Church, whatever it was, East Lake Church. But now that has really regressed again. And as a result, Chris, I work with a lot of men who profess to be Christians, but have just made a decision for themselves and for their family that church is not going to be a part of their lives. So I'd love to just ask you to kind of maybe speak to that. Like why do men and their families need the church to thrive? And then maybe the flip side, why do churches need men to thrive? Like that, there's a synergy between a strong man and a strong church when those two are partnered well together. And it feels like our churches are struggling because they don't have men, and our men are struggling because they don't have the church. So maybe you can just kind of speak to that, if you can, for a little bit about that idea.
Yeah, it's so good, man. And you're right. It's a direct correlation. And it's also a bigger system, because, confused men make confused homes. Confused homes make confused churches. Confused churches make confused cities. Strong, clear men with clarity make strong, clear homes, strong, clear churches. You get the picture. But what happened was, because churches began to cater towards women and children, and we did it in everything. So we did it in aesthetics. We did it in the songs we sing. We went from singing about Christ is my captain and onward Christian soldier to singing about drowning in an ocean of his love. I mean, all that has a femininity to it. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just telling you what happened, right? The number one evangelical phrase today is have a personal relationship with Christ. But that's not necessarily in the Bible. Now, why do we say it? Well, we say it because it appeals to women, because women are looking for a personal relationship. They're looking for someone to go have coffee with at Starbucks. Right? Men are looking for a captain to follow. They're looking for a hill to take. They're looking for an adventure to go on, right? So it's everything from the aesthetics to the to the verbiage started to shift towards women and children, which it just wasn't very appealing to men. So I'm not shocked that 40 million people have left the church in the last 20 years, according to the Great Dechurching, those guys out of Orlando that just wrote that phenomenal research. 40 million people have left in the last 20 years, and men have led in the leaving.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get why church isn't very appealing. I get why Jesus doesn't look like someone that you'd want to get behind and run into a burning building with. But that's on us. That's on Western culture for painting that type of picture of ecclesiology and painting that type of picture of Christology and who Christ is. I would encourage men to find a church that paints Christ in the right picture, that paints the fellowship in the right picture, because the Bible is clear. To neglect gathering and to neglect Jesus's bride is a problem. You're not going to grow as a Christian husband. You're not going to grow as a Christian father. You're not going to grow as a Christian apart from the bride of Christ. It's impossible. It's just impossible. Right? And the bride of Christ has never hurt you. I meet so many men talking about, well, the church hurt me or the church disowned me. No, that's King Jesus's bride. The only thing she does is help. The only thing she does is heal. Someone in the church might have hurt you, or some people in the church might have disowned you, but King Jesus's bride can't hurt you. It's impossible. She can only help you and heal you. So get plugged into a good Bible preaching, good Bible teaching, a church that's focused on fellowship, a church that's focused on reaching and winning men. Why is that? Well, because biblically, men are called to lead in the church. Not that women can't lead or women shouldn't lead. We can do that another show, but men specifically are called to lead in the church. And here's what happens when men don't lead: women will naturally step up and fill that void. And that's what we're seeing all across the country. So it's this circle of men feeling like they don't belong in the church, so they're not engaging with the church. So now the church becomes obsolete. The church doesn't matter. I can just do it on my own, which the reality is most men aren't leading little house churches. What they do is they just stop doing it.
Yeah.
They stop praying, they stop singing, they stop, XYZ. And it's this pandemic. It's a problem today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris, I was at a gathering with a group of leaders across Seattle. And of course, the conversation is, how do the leaders of Seattle reach Seattle? And one of the men was a pastor in Aurora, which is a very dark part of North Seattle. It's known for homelessness, prostitutes, drugs, everything. And he started sharing, he said that over the last 8 months, they've seen more salvations, more people come to Christ than in any time during his 12 years of planting this church. And I went up to him afterwards and knowing a little bit of his backstory, I said, hey, when would you say this kind of new movement of growth began? And he said it was probably around September. And I said, okay, Keith, if I remember correctly, that was the same time that you and I got together for coffee. And you told me, I'm putting all of my emphasis on reaching and investing in men.
100%.
And he kind of had this awakened look, and he goes, that's right. He said, you're absolutely right. I said, what do you think the connection is? I think it's a direct connection. When I began to invest in men, then the church started to grow, salvation started to happen, rededications began to take place, baptisms, because of that emphasis. I almost believe, and Chris, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, but I believe that there is a spiritual principle there, that when a church invests in men, that God is going to bless it and grow it because of that prioritization. Am I off in thinking that?
I think it's a spiritual principle, and it's practical. So spiritually, when God created the heavens and the earth, he put a man in the middle of the garden. When that man messed up, he sent another man to redeem it. And then he appointed 12 men to go tell that story. There's something about being a man in God's economy. There just is. Doesn't mean women are less than. As a matter of fact, we teach the opposite. But there's something unique about being a man. You know, I start every conference I speak at with the phrase, I love being a man. I don't think we say that enough. I think every man should wake up every day, look in the mirror, and say, I love being a man. I really believe that. And then practically, bro, $7 billion a year on children's ministry, only to have 70% of high school schoolers walk away from church when they graduate. Okay? That's the result. So every year we dump $7 billion in, and then every year on this end, 70% walk away from the church. Statistics, cold statistics. If I told you, John, Warren, I've got this great idea. Give me $7 billion every year, and then I'm going to lose 70% of it every year. It's phenomenal. You would tell me I'm crazy. You would tell me I'm crazy. Yet that's exactly what we do every single year. The return, the ROI, we've already won the children. The whole children's ministry movement of the 80s, building the children's ministry wings, put the giant treehouse in the middle of your church. Man, I don't care. Good on you. We need to have good children's ministries. We've already won them. We've already won the women. The last 10 years, the number one author at Lifeway has been a woman. There's more women's curriculums and studies and meetings than you can shake a stick at. Like, we've won the women. The question I'm asking is, where has that gotten us? We've won all the children. We've won all the women. Where has it gotten us? You win the men, everything changes. Everything changes, right? And people may say, well, and they've told me, well, that's sexist, or that's misogynistic, or that's archaic. Well, no, it's biblical. And the reasons why we're not getting the ROI on our investment is because we're not investing in the right thing. We need to be investing more in the men. And it's simple. Every church can do this, right? I was at a pretty prominent church a couple of months ago, and they don't have a men's ministry. So they asked me just to, hey, will you meet with our church leadership and let's talk about how we can reach the men in our community. So I did this whole multi-generational discipleship thing. We need the older reaching down to the younger and all this stuff. And they said, man, that's great, but we need something practical, something we could do tomorrow. And I said, do 3 things. No more dad jokes. Stop making fun of men. Stop. The world makes fun of men. TV, music, culture bashes on men. The church has to stop. Our worship leader, we had a women's conference at our church, and most of the women were gone that day. So our worship leader started the service by making this little joke. Hey, none of the women are here today. It's all men. You'll probably notice that a lot of the kids come and they were wearing, clothes 2 sizes too small or 2 sizes too big. Dad got them ready this morning. And everybody kind of laughed, and we just went on with this worship. Well, I told him after the service, I said, hey, bro, I don't appreciate that. He's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm a grown man, dude. I can dress my kids.
Yeah.
Like heaven forbid, if my wife dies tomorrow, my children are going to be okay because they've got their father. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And I said, when you make little jokes like that at our expense, I said, all you're doing is just driving more and more men away. I said, so no more dad jokes. Stop. Secondly, no more guilt-ridden sermons towards men. Like, we already feel inadequate. Like, I'm already disappointed in myself that I don't spend enough time with my kids. I get it, bro. I get it. Right? Yeah. No more shameful, guilt-ridden sermons aimed at men, especially on Father's Day. And then the third thing, I asked this particular church, I said, how many door greeters do you have on a Sunday morning? Parking lot attendees. And he said 300. We have 300 for every service. Massive church. I said, train every one of them. When they see a man walking his family across the parking lot, grab him by the shoulder and say, "We see you, brother. Well done." I said, just start encouraging the men as they walk in the church. I said, when you see a college student walking across the parking lot holding his Bible, grab him by the arm and say, "Hey, brother, I know how hard it is to stay pure in this culture. I want you to know we're proud of you and we're here for you." I said, dude, just start boosting every man you see. And he looked at me basically in tears. He's like, "Bro, we're going to start that tomorrow." I said, "Absolutely, man. Just start encouraging the men."
I love this because when you speak up to men, they typically rise to the occasion.
That's it, bro. Yeah.
If you speak down to men, they may laugh, but they'll typically just kind of fade out, you know? I like this idea too of like doing away with like, actually, I really hate most pulpit humor across the board. I think most of it is just like worn out and it's like, just stop. It's like on repeat. But I love the emphasis of, hey, we're really going to encourage men. And you have this disparity between what Mother's Day looks like. You women are awesome. You're amazing. Which, by the way, I'm like, keep doing that. That's awesome. But then it's Father's Day. Like, where are you? You bunch of men, lazy, good for nothing, you know? And obviously there's a context, as you said before, even like looking at identity, it's like, we do need to get down to what it looks like to die, you know, saying I'm dying to myself, but you're doing so but ultimately that death leads to a resurrection, a life, a newness of what does Irenaeus say? He says, the glory of God is man fully alive, you know, and what you're leading towards is that fully alive. Yeah. So I love the actionable steps. And actually I was in my head, I was like, okay, I want to ask him like, okay, if I gave you what, 7 billion or whatever you said was invested in children's ministry, and it's like, and if we turn that around, invested in men's ministry, what would it look like? So you gave us some, but what's a bigger picture saying, this is a great start, do these 3 things. What's a bigger picture you're saying, this is where men's ministry needs to go 2024 and beyond? Like,
absolutely. So good, bro. So we have to stop feeding stereotypes. So I tell men's ministry leaders all the time, Kevin Hart and The Rock are 2 different expressions of men, but they both starred in the same movie. Okay. So like I don't really get down with the wild game feeds, right? I don't eat deer. Like I eat Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A, bro. So like I can appreciate the wild game stuff and the axe throwing and the flannel. Like I can appreciate all that. But when that's all you do, when all you do is bring in the Navy SEAL to talk about faith and freedom, you are excluding an entire portion of men.
It's the wrong scorecard.
100%. And to your point, like most of these tricks have already been played out. My guess is if what you're doing today, you were still doing in the 90s, you should probably stop doing it. Like I would offer that encouragement, unless it's just teaching the word of God, which is timeless, right? But whatever ploys and tricks that, you know, golf scrambles, you can probably stop having golf scrambles. Most Gen Z men don't play golf. You know, a lot of millennial men don't play golf, right? So we run these plays and we wonder why the same old men literally keep showing up. So we've got to kill the stereotypes. The 2 things that most men need today are clarity around what it means to be a man, and then the community of other men to journey with. And in that, you know, I would really encourage churches, leaders of men, whoever, men watching this show, you know, we've gotten away. There was this move in the 80s in evangelicalism where we moved from educational spaces to communal spaces. And this thing called life groups was born. It's a good thing, but for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. We even took pastors and called them age and stage pastors. And we started to segregate the church by age and stage. marrieds, unmarrieds, young kids, old kids, 20 somethings over here, 60-year-olds over here. And we thought by putting all the 20-year-olds together in a corner, wisdom and experience would just bloom. But that's not the case. Like, can men lead up? Absolutely. I've seen it. But more times than not, and especially in scripture, wisdom and experience is transferred down. It's transferred down. We've got to start. It's like an awkward 8th grade dance. You got a bunch of old guys over here, a bunch of young guys over here, and you're waiting for somebody to break the ice. No, we've got to figure out a way to take these older men who are 1 step ahead, 4 steps ahead, whatever, pair them up with some younger men, and they're willing to say, hey, come follow me, right? I'm not perfect, but I am progressing. I've screwed up 3 times. Maybe following me, you'll only mess up twice. We've got to figure out how to reunite the generations, because we have killed multi-generational discipleship in most of our churches. You know,
Would you say this model then really demands that older men be mature enough to say, hey, where the men of my generation form communities around these things, golfing, as you used it, we actually need to meet the younger men where they're at and try to help form communities. Obviously, the locus of these communities is a timeless thing, God's word, right? So that doesn't change. But I'm just trying to think of, like, we're trying to bridge this gap. Is the disparity of trying to bridge this gap because it's like, hey, come to what we like to do, and they're like, hey, that's not really our speed, old people, you're feeling this natural gap, like, and maybe there's more to it because you've been doing this more study. What would you think will help mature this dynamic of bringing together the generation?
So I think we've got to go back to more of those educational spaces, and I'll give you an example. I had an older man have breakfast with me. He was a men's leader, complaining about how, the younger generations aren't coming out. And we were right by a college campus, big college campus. And he said, Chris, how do I reach the younger generation? I said, do you have a resume? And he said, yeah. I said, I want you to take your resume and I want you to put at the top of it, grandfather type, looking for young men to grandfather. And then I just want you to list every skill you could teach him. Change his oil, how to frame a roof. I don't care. Just list 10 skills you could teach him. I said, print that out and put it on the college campus. I said, within 2 hours, you'll have 100 phone calls. And he looked at me and he said, I can't do that. And I said, no, you won't do it. I said, there's a difference. There's a difference. You can. So think about Gen Z. Gen Z, the research tells us, they're the most financially conservative generation. So if you tell a Gen Z kid, and really it's a Gen Z young man, okay, you tell a Gen Z young man, hey, you can go get your oil changed over here and pay $50, or I can teach you how to do it in 45 minutes and it'll cost you $8 for a filter. Bro, he is yours for 45 minutes. He is locked in. And guess what you get to do? Man, you get to share life and you get to share about Jesus and you get to share wisdom and experience, right? I host 2 events that are multi-generational, and I've seen multi-generational connections from these events. Not everybody agrees with them. Don't send me an email. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I host UFC watch parties because old men and young men love that. And then the last Thursday of the month, I host a group called Holy Smokes at a cigar club where we sit around and smoke a cigar. And guess what? Young men and old men love that too. And the beautiful thing about a cigar is a good one lasts about an hour and 15 minutes. So like you've got that relational time. And I get it, not every church can do that. But my point is, to your question, man, every older man, and I don't care if you're on your second or third marriage. I don't care if your business has failed. I don't like I understand life happens. But here's the deal. The Apostle Paul murdered Christians, but he walked into heaven to the applause of the people he had killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everybody's qualified to some degree. You might not be qualified to be a pastor. You might not be qualified for this, but you are qualified to be a spiritual father.
Mm.
All you have to do is put your hand up and say, hey, listen, I did not get this right. And I've learned a few things along the way. I'd love to teach you. Dude, I have never had, I don't know how many young men I've discipled, and I'm a very intentional discipler. I have never had anyone tell me no. Ever.
Mm.
I said, hey,
So,
would you like to do life? Would you like to? No one's ever said no.
Warren, you wanted to say something?
Chris, this is so good. We do need to wrap this up, and so I'm going to ask you in just a minute to maybe just share a little bit of how guys can follow you and what their next steps might be to try to connect with the work of BetterMan. But I wanted to just kind of tie back to what you talked about there just a little while. You said two absolutely critical things for a man to really thrive in masculinity today. You said clarity and community. And I just want to say, like, for us at Impact Players, like, we really believe that the secret sauce to what makes our Impact Players cohorts so powerful and effective is what we call audacious authenticity and the unadulterated word of God. We just really believe that when men can get into a community where they can be totally honest about everything that they're going through and then bring the word of God into that conversation, that's what really captures and transforms men. We have so many men who tell me either I've been a part of recovery groups or things like that where there's a lot of authenticity, or I've been a part of church Bible studies where there's a lot of scripture. But when you bring those two together, it just like sets, flame to the fuel. It is just like a spark that blows up in men's lives. And I know that that's a big part of what BetterMan is doing with its groups and curriculum and those kind of things. So as we wrap this up, tell us a little bit about how guys can follow you, how they can follow BetterMan, and keep growing as men, because it's a journey. They're not going to wake up tomorrow and be all that they want to be, but how do they keep growing using some of the resources that you are putting out personally and through BetterMan?
Yeah, so good, man. And thanks for saying that, and agree with you. I meet like-minded people all the time, but sometimes I meet like-hearted brothers, and you and John both are very like-hearted. So grateful for that. Super simple. BetterMan is a free resource, and there's no bait and switch there. Like it really is free. 80% of our launches, we don't really have a lot of contact with. They just download the material. They download the videos right off of betterman.com and they launch their group. So you can go to betterman.com, you create a what we call a leader login, and then you have access to 31 weeks of content geared around what it means to be God's man today. And then that 31 weeks is best done in a community of other men. The idea is you're a step ahead and you're going to grab 6 to 8 other guys and you're going to go through it. It's not super deep. It's not what I call deep discipleship. We very much are the on-ramp to manhood and masculinity. So if you're looking and if you're confused about what it means to be a man today, this is going to give you the clarity and community you need to figure that out. For the men that are a little further along, I've had some of them do BetterMan and they'll shoot me an email and say, hey, Chris, this was good, but it's not deep enough for me. My response is always, that's great. I didn't write it for you. I wrote it for the 6 guys you're going to bring around a table. like if you feel like you're a little further in the deep end, great. I'm not going to argue with you. There are 4.2 billion men in the world that are not. Go grab 6 of them and have them wade in the water with you. Like it's a free tool. It's frictionless. Yeah. Download it and go. And then take it to your church, take it to your community college, take it to your local sports team, take it to your military base. In the last 24 months, we've launched 7,200 studies, all 50 states, 80 countries. there's a BetterMan going on right now, just about in every corner of the globe. And so it really is that easy to use. Get in there. We do have a podcast. It drops every Monday, the BetterMan podcast. And then I have a blog called Good Trouble, the Chris Harper Good Trouble blog. It's on Substack. But I write twice a week there, and we're just talking about these things, man. We're talking about manhood in the 21st century. So we love to welcome and invite anyone and all into the community.
It's amazing. And I just want to say, I have looked at these materials. I've listened to them, watched them, checked them out. They are fantastic. I get your Good Trouble email and really enjoy it. I get the daily devotionals that you guys are putting out. Just always phenomenal, and keep bringing you back to being God's man, living out those 4 W's that you talked about. So, Chris, it's so great to have you with us. I feel honored truly to be able to have you be a part of this podcast, and for you to share not only your time, but your wisdom and the treasure of the experience that you bring to this really important conversation. I hope that God will give us continued opportunities to bless and encourage each other in the days ahead. But for myself, for John, for every other man that is out there listening to this podcast, thank you. And guys, let's get after this together. Don't do it on your own. Isolation is the enemy's tactic. Get into a band of brothers and start fighting the right fight with other men who you can link shields with. If you have any questions about how to do that, reach out to us at impactplayers.org. Let us know. We would love to help you find your band of brothers and get started in your path and journey to become a great husband, a great father, and a great leader by being equipped to thrive in the relationships that matter most. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you again, Harp, for being a part of this. And we will catch you guys next time.
Thank you for joining us for the Impact Players Linking Shields podcast. We hope you're inspired to become a better husband, father, and leader. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a 5-star review, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Stay connected and continue your journey with us. Visit impactplayers.org for more resources and updates. Thanks for being a part of the Impact Players community. Keep thriving in the relationships that matter most.